Alright, for this trick, I'd begin by handing the cards to my spectator and having them mix them up to their heart's content. They can give them some cuts, some shuffles, whatever they'd like. But once they're done mixing the cards, I'd take them back and I'd say, alright, you know what we're actually going to do? We're actually going to cut the cards into two roughly equal piles, I'd say. And now what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you select a card from one of these two piles. Okay, but I want it to be a very fair choice. So I'm going to have you choose, you know, whichever pile you want to select your card from. So do you want to select it from this pile or this pile? Either one. And let's say they want to select their card from this pile here, and I say, okay, perfect. I'm just going to go ahead and spread the cards here, and I'd like you to go ahead, take any card out that you'd like. So let's say they took out this card, and I'd go ahead and I'd hand that card to them, and I'd go ahead and have them look at that card. I don't know how well you can see that. Anyway, once they're done selecting the card, I'd take the card back and I'd say, all right, you know what, well, I wouldn't take the card back. They'd still be holding the card, and I'd say, okay, go ahead, just drop it back into the pile whenever you'd like. So I'm going to dribble down, you say stop whenever you want. Stop, right there. Okay, perfect. I'll leave your card right there. We'll dribble these cards back in, and I'll even go as far as handing the cards to them, or I'd go ahead and shuffle the cards as much until the spectator is satisfied. They say, okay, these cards are shuffled enough, okay? I just give them some nice, fair shuffles, just like this. And after they're done, I'd even take it one step further, and I'd even shuffle both of the piles back together, just like this. I'd even go and give it a few extra cuts, just to make sure that everything's just super fairly mixed. Now what I do is I take a look at my spectator, and as I'm looking at them, looking them in the eyes, I'd go through the cards just like this, and I'd say, I think your card's a club. I think it's maybe this one. And I tell my spectator, you know, keep in mind, you know, you could have had any number of these cards here in this deck, okay? You could have selected literally any card. But you selected one card very freely, very fairly. We lost it very thoroughly back. And hopefully, if I've read your mind correctly, I should have read your mind that you selected the 7 of clubs. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Josiah, and today we're going to be learning a very cool setup card trick. It's not self-working, but which is kind of interesting. Now, I've been doing the Summer Stack series, and I've taught a deck switch, I've taught how to false cut and shuffle a deck, so there are a whole bunch of things you can do to make sure that your spectator really can shuffle the cards, because a lot of people might come to this video and say, well, if it's set up and you lied to us in the performance, you can't actually shuffle the cards. That's absolutely not true. You can have a spectator shuffle the cards. You just have to do a deck switch. So the way you do that is you'd have an identical deck of cards to the one you're using that is just completely shuffled, and the other one is set up, and then you do your deck switch. Okay, anyway, I've talked about that on the channel a couple times. What's kind of interesting about this trick, though, as I think I've said it before, I'm not sure, but it's not a self-working trick, okay? I've taught two card tricks that teach in the Summer Stack series so far, and both of those tricks were self-working tricks. You just follow the instructions and the trick worked out. This trick is kind of interesting because rather than it being a self-working trick, you actually have to do something on your own part. There's a lot more sleight of hand involved while it's still being a setup card trick, which makes it kind of interesting. Now this trick, I don't know what you want to call it. I guess I'll call it mind reading miracles, or whatever. And I'm not sure what to call this trick, but to be quite honest, It's a pretty well-known trick in the magic community. I think a lot of people learn this trick when they start out as beginners. However, the original way this was done was okay, it just wasn't the best, okay? But I think this is one of these instances where I've gone back and I've looked at a trick that magicians do a lot, and I've decided, you know what? This could be better. So what I've done with this trick, like I've done with previous tricks on this channel in the past, is I've kind of taken that trick and I've kind of beefed it up. I've added a whole bunch of extra little things to make it a lot more deceptive and a lot better. So anyway, let's just get into the tutorial. Alright, in this video I'm going to be using the green Monarchs playing cards from Theory 11. This is a really cool deck of cards. Yeah. Once again, I have come to realize I say it's a really cool deck of cards every time. So just know, again, if you ever want to use a deck of cards that I use in my videos, the link will be in the description box down below. But anyway, let's go ahead and learn this trick. So let's start with the setup for this trick. Now, you know, actually, before I get into the setup of this trick, let's talk about kind of what exactly the original version of this was. Essentially, the way it works is, and this is an idea that many magicians have worked upon before, is that you have two separate piles of cards, okay? And there's a distinct difference between each. For instance, one's a pile of even cards and one's a pile of odd cards. One's a pile of red cards, one's a pile of black cards. One's a pile of, I mean, there's just a difference, basic difference like that you could easily tell without really thinking about it, right? And so essentially what happened is you'd have a spectator select a card from one pile, and then you'd bury it in the other pile. So in essence, the one card the spectator's thinking of should be in the opposite pile of the one they chose, and it's the mismatched cards. For instance, if you had a pile of even cards and a pile of odd cards, if you had a spectator select a card from the even pile, you'd return it to the odd pile, so then you can shuffle the cards whatever you want, and then you can go through the odd pile and pick out the one even card, and that would be their card. Okay, so that's just an example of kind of the idea behind this trick, and there are a whole bunch of other versions of it, slightly different variations. But this variation that I like this one because it's, there is a little bit of cleanup you have to do at the end. You don't end super clean. But I really like this version because it really allows you to, you know, I think it's very fair and it's very easy with the way the piles are set up. So essentially, here's what you're going to do with your deck of cards. You're going to take the cards and you're going to set them up like this. You're going to take, oh, by the way, before I continue, I don't know how, well, never mind. But over there, I organized my card drawer over there, or I put all my cards over there. Maybe I'll show that in a future video. But anyway, you're going to begin your setup by separating. You're going to deal the cards out to two piles, separating the black cards from the red cards. You're going to deal black cards and red cards. So you're just going to go through like this, and you're going to just separate them, and I'll speed up this process a little bit. Alright, so once you're done, if your deck of cards has two jokers, get rid of one of the jokers, and we're just going to use one joker. This joker is going to serve a very specific purpose that we'll get to in just a second. So, actually, we'll get to it right now, I just realized. So, you're going to give this joker a crimp. Now, what a crimp is, essentially, is it's a term that magicians use to refer to some sort of a bend, particularly some sort of a bend or an irregular, I can't speak, it's some sort of, essentially it's a bend or some sort of irregularity, I believe that's the word, okay, in a card that causes it to be able to, in the structure of it, not necessarily in the face or the back, just the structure of the card essentially that allows you to separate the card distinctly in the pack. So for instance, I know that seems kind of weird, but for instance, this is a very basic crimp, just a simple bend like that. Essentially what the bend allows me to do is it allows me to get this small separation in the cards right here where that crimp is, and it allows me to cut right to that joker every single time. So There are a whole bunch of different types of crimps. You can pretty much use whatever one you like. The one I'm going to suggest you use is what's called a reverse breather's crimp. Now, a breather's crimp essentially means that you're going to make a bend that creates an X in the card, okay? Now, a regular breather's crimp, you do it on the face of the card with the card facing up, but in a reverse breather's crimp, you're going to use it with the card facing down. So you're going to have the card facing down just like this. You're going to bring your fingers here. This is the position your fingers need to be in. So these two fingers need to be here on the back, just like this, on either side, and your thumbs right here. This is the grip. You're going to press down with these, with the thumb like this. So you're just going to press down and create a bend. And you're going to pull out with your thumbs like this, okay? And what that's going to do is it's going to create this bend in the card, okay? And you're going to do that on the other side as well, okay? And then you can just kind of like this. Now, this is slightly exaggerated, but essentially what it does is it creates this bend in the card, okay? Now, in this case, I have exaggerated a little bit for the camera, but in an actual performance, we do it a little bit less than this. But essentially, this is a reverse breather's crimp. So now this card just looks like it's a little bit bent. No spectator is ever going to really notice that. But this is going to allow you to do some pretty cool stuff. So you're going to then take your reverse breather's crimp card, and you're going to put it on top of either pile. I'd like to put it on top of the red pile, and you're going to place the other pile on top of that. So what the Joker does, or your breather's crimp card, your reverse breather's crimp card does, is it allows you to separate those two packets, because you could, of course, remove the breather's crimp altogether and just hold a break between the two cards from the beginning, but this doesn't allow you to cut them or shuffle them or really do anything, okay? So having a breather's crimp card over there allows you to at least get your break very easily, okay? So the breather's crimp card kind of holds the break for you without you actually having to physically hold the break. So, of course, then you can give the cards any number of false cuts, false shuffles, you can do your deck switch, whatever, but then when you pull out the deck of cards, if you don't try and cut to the breather crimp card. If you try and cut to it, chances are you're going to miss by one or two cards, okay? But if you just lightly pick up on the cards like this, okay, most of the time you're going to get your breather's crimp card. I don't know how to describe it. You don't even think about it. You just kind of pick up, and there are occasional times when you'll cut one card or two cards short, but I mean, that's essentially it. And if you're ever worried about cutting, like sometimes for me personally, I find most of the time when I miss, I end up cutting like one card above, and I don't want to do that. So what I like to do sometimes, and especially in performance, just to make sure that I get it, is that at the back, I'll kind of look for that break. I'll lift up at that break. I'm going to look to make sure, and I'm just doing this casually, I'm just going to look to make sure that I'm getting the Joker. Like, I'm going to make sure that I'm getting the Joker right here, and I get a break, okay? And I'm going to cut it into the deck into two piles. So it looks like I've just randomly cut the cards, but what I've actually done is I have my red cards and I have the black cards, but at the bottom of one pile I have my breather's crimp Joker that held the break for me, okay? So you're here in this position. From here you're going to just have a spectator select either pile to select their card from, and they can select either pile. So they select whatever card they want. Now, let this be noted, okay? You might be wondering, if they choose the red pile, you spread the cards out, and they choose the bottom card, what do you do at that point, okay? Well, if they choose the bottom card of the pile on your right, in my case, whatever, if they choose the bottom card of the pile on your right, or whatever pile had the Joker on the bottom, you're in a very perfect position, because now you know they've chosen the Joker already, because you know that was the card at the bottom. But what's really cool about that is that now you can do this very clean, very fair trick where you can make this even more fair, because now you know they have the Joker, so you can mix up the cards. You can spring the cards all over the place and then go and pick out exactly what card they want. You can just go crazy with that. So that's just what to do in that scenario. All right, so of course, they're going to select a card, whatever card they select, in this case the Jack of Diamonds. What you're going to do is you're going to put that pile back. Now, this is where it gets kind of interesting, because what you could just pick up the other pile and casually put it in, and no one's ever going to really notice. But just to make it that much more deceptive, what I actually like to do is, as they're looking at the card, I set this pile down and I pick up the other pile, okay? Now, There aren't many people, now if anyone notices, it won't really matter. I don't think they're going to really care. And I say, all right, and I just kind of casually set it here, and I take a little bit of a pause, and I say, okay, look, here's what I'm actually going to do. So don't let me see your card, but what I'd like you to do, get the image of that card in your mind. Just get it in your mind. And of course, I'm just kind of gesturing. I'm going to pick up the other pile, of course. So the pile they selected their card from is on the table, and the opposite pile, in this case, my black pile, is right here. So I then have my spectator take the card. I'm going to dribble through the cards, and they can drop it back in whenever they want, or you can just kind of spread the cards, and they can just stuff it back in. Whatever you want, they just stick their card back in, and then you shuffle this up. But of course, it's the only red card in the black pile, so makes sense. Now, of course, you could hand this to your spectator. However, that risks the danger of them turning the cards face up and shuffling them, in which case they'll see a bunch of black cards, and then they'll kind of get to figure out, ah ha ha, you sneaky one. I guess it's a risk you might be willing to take. I personally am not, but so for me personally, I just shuffle the cards until my spectator seems satisfied, and that works for most people. And then this is where it gets really interesting, because of course I could just go through the cards here and then read their mind. But what I don't like about that is it doesn't give reason to the other pile, because as of currently, the other reason doesn't have much, the other pile doesn't have really much of a reason. There's not much justification to the other pile. I say, you know what? We'll even take the other pile and we'll shuffle the two piles together just to make sure that your card is really, really lost, okay? This is where, and then what this does is it gives this pile another purpose, and it also it's just nice, a nice addition, okay? But what I'm actually going to do now is I'm actually going to do a Zorro shuffle, okay? Which I taught in a Summer Stack series episode, which you can find in the playlist of the Summer Stack series in the description. But I'm just going to do a Zorro shuffle, and what the Zorro shuffle does, doing the Zorro shuffle does is essentially you end in this position here, okay? Or, of course, I would shuffle, what it does, essentially, it ends in this position here, okay? Where you have your red pile, where you have the pile of the spectator selected their card from, and then you have all of the pile, and then you have the pile with where the spectator's card actually is. So in this case, we have the red pile here, the black pile here. It could be the opposite way, depending on how the cards were selected, where the black pile's here and the red pile's here. And then you have one card from this pile on top, okay? So what this allows you to do is this allows you to then give the cards, some false cuts, whatever, false shuffles, whatever. But after giving the cards false cuts and false shuffles, you can then turn the cards face up. Of course, you can't spread them out here, but you can spread them. You spread them to yourself. And you just go through to the top pile, and you look for the card of the opposite color in the middle of all these cards. So if the cards at the bottom of the deck are red, then you're going to look through the black cards for the one red card, okay? And ignore the top card. The top card doesn't matter, okay? Just remember that, okay? If the black cards are on the bottom, then you go through and you find the one black card and all the red cards on top, ignoring the top card, obviously. You always ignore this top card, because that's not the spectator's card. It won't be. So you go through, you find their one card, you take it out, you set it down here, you build the suspense. Now, this is where a bit of cleanup happens, because as I'm talking to them, I'm going to casually, not even making a big deal about it, I'm just going to shuffle the cards together. Now, I want to give it at least 2 shuffles, because if I give it one riffle shuffle, it doesn't look super shuffled. So I just give it one more casual shuffle here. I just give it, one more casual shuffle, maybe a cut, and then I come here, I spread the cards face up, and it looks like the cards are just completely shuffled, okay? And what this does is it gives the feeling that the cards actually were shuffled. It's, and it also cleans up the fact that you had the red and the black piles and that kind of stuff, okay? Anyway, in here, you want to milk it, okay? And when you're spreading through the cards, taking out their card, you don't just want to go through and then just take out a card and say, this is your card, okay? That's the dumbest thing you can do. You want to milk it. You want to build suspense, because, you want to kind of think, I think it's a diamond, whatever you say, okay? Just milk it. Use whatever presentation works for you, okay? Just milk it. And then, once you come here to this position, you're going to be here. You want to really milk it at this point, because once you've given the cards at least that one shuffle, after you've taken out their card, it's game over. The trick is done. No one can catch you out on anything, okay? The trick is over. There's nothing to hide, okay? Everything's done. So you just milk it, you say, and if I've done it correctly, if I've read your mind correctly, your card I should have selected your card, okay? And what I like to do oftentimes at the end of my tricks, I mentioned this before, I kind of like to flick the card sometimes and just toss it out there and just let them take free reign to examine whatever they want. And yeah, that's the trick. So hopefully you enjoyed it, and let's just go to the outro. Alright, and that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell so you'll be notified when I upload a new video. Hopefully you enjoyed learning this trick. I certainly enjoyed teaching it. And yeah, I believe this is Summer Stack Series episode 7? I'm gonna go with 7. But yeah, I don't really have much else to say. In my last video I taught some card switches, and so I'm going to let you know in my next video I'm going to be teaching a trick that will utilize one of those card switches. So yeah, anyway, see you next time.